Let's talk sexuality. Hello and welcome to the podcast Let's Talk Sexuality by Tathapi Trust, the podcast that brings to you stories on relationship and sexuality.
Hi, it's Peter from the Storytellers. Do you like listening to stories? Well, today's story is taken from the play Nagamandala by Girish Karnad. Girish Karnad is an actor, a writer, a film director, and he was even the director of FTII at one time. But he is by far most brilliant as a playwright. Born in 1938, one of his earliest works, Tughlaq, came out in 1964. Nagamandala was written in 1988. The play is based on two folk tales in Kannada, originally collected and transcribed by Girish Karnad's mentor, A.K. Ramanujam. The two stories are The Flame and the Song and The Snake Bridegroom. And to narrate this story, Nagamandala, I have here in the studio with me Chetan. Hi Chetan, and thank you for being with us.
Hi Peter, happy to be here.
Chetan, where did you first come across this particular story?
I cannot say for sure, but I remember reading about the play being staged somewhere. And then there was this Hindi movie Paheli with Shah Rukh Khan and Rani Mukherjee in the lead, which was a very similar story, though from a totally different source. That story was by Vijaydhan Deta, not by Girish Karnad. But I guess both writers built their stories from the same folk tale. And that's when I read Nagamandala and got totally enamored by it.
Okay, let us now listen to Chetan's telling of Nagamandala.
Nagamandala by Girish Karnad. Rani was the only child of her parents, and they doted on her. Rani had beautiful long hair, and when her hair was plaited and tossed over her shoulder, it was as if a king cobra lay curled on the nape of her neck. Rani, the queen of the tresses. Rani, the queen of the whole wide world. As soon as the young girl came of age, she was married to Appanna. Appanna was from the neighboring village, was well-to-do, but both his parents had passed away. After the wedding, Rani and Appanna walked back to Appanna's village in silence, with Appanna always a few steps ahead and Rani following. As soon as they reached Appanna's house, he unlocked the door, let Rani in. And once they had set their belongings down, Appanna said, "I will be back at noon tomorrow. Keep my lunch ready." With those words, Appanna stepped outside, locked the door from the outside and walked away. Rani called after him, Wait, where are you going? Don't leave me alone." But Appanna was gone. Rani wasn't used to being left alone at home, and this was a new place. She cried herself to sleep. Now the whole village knew that Appanna had a concubine. He spent every night with her, but nobody had told Rani or her parents about this. The next day at noon, the door was unlocked and Appanna stepped in, walking purposefully towards the bathroom. Rani ran to him asking, "Where were you all night? Why did you leave me alone?" With a stern holding up of his hand to stop any further conversation, he said, "I'm going for a bath. Get my lunch ready." He came out after his bath and ate in silence, and then left the house again, once again locking the door after him. And this carried on day after day. Rani was so miserable. She was lonely, she was scared, and she would cry most of the time. And the rest of the time, she would talk to herself, imagining that she was with her parents. One day, Appanna's blind aunt, Kurudava, came by to check on her nephew's new bride. Kurudava knew that Appanna was smitten by a concubine and spent all his time with her. She was hoping that marriage had changed him. When she reached the front door, she was very surprised to feel a lock on the door. Where could they have gone? Just as she was about to leave, her extra sharp ears picked up the sound of someone sobbing. So she walked around the house to a window and called out, Rani was so excited to hear another human voice and she rushed to the window. Through the grills of the window, Gurudava felt young Rani's hands and face, and Rani's tears told half the story. She asked Rani, "Does he beat you?" No, said Rani. "Does he talk to you?" "No," said Rani most disappointedly. Has he touched you?" Naive and unsure of what the old lady meant, Rani said, "No, he hasn't touched me." Keen to help, Kurudava consoled the young girl and said, "Now don't worry, I have just the thing for you. You know, I was a blind girl, no one would marry me. But one day, a very learned sage stayed at our home and I served him devotedly. He was so pleased, he gave me a magic root. He asked me to put a little bit of it into the food of a young man. Soon thereafter, a young cousin came by to visit. I added a little bit of the root in his food and served it to him. He fell madly in love with me. We were married and lived a very happily married life. It finally took the plague to separate him from me. I have some of that root saved away. Here, you take it." Rani was very excited. That afternoon, when Appanna came home, as usual went for a bath, Rani prepared the lunch. And in her excitement, she took a generous portion of the root and ground it into a paste and added it to the curry. The moment she did that, the curry turned a violent red and started bubbling like lava. It looked terrible. She was sure that Appanna would be furious. So she picked up the vessel off the flame and ran into the courtyard, looking for a place to dispose the evidence. The corner of the courtyard, there was an anthill. She ran towards it and poured the entire curry down the anthill and ran back towards the kitchen. Now, there happened to be a king cobra that lived in that anthill. Doused in the curry, it raised its head out of the anthill and saw Rani just as she was entering the kitchen. And the king cobra fell madly in love with Rani. Meanwhile, Appanna emerged from his bath and asked for his lunch. Enraged to find no lunch ready for him, he slapped his wife and left the house in a rage, as usual locking the door behind him. Rani just lay on the floor of the kitchen and cried herself to sleep, as she had done so many times in the past. After the sun set, the king cobra emerged from the anthill and slithered towards the house. He entered the house through the bathroom drain. And then, as it is commonly believed in Indian folklore, cobras can assume a human form of their choice. So the cobra assumed the form of Appanna. Now the snake looks exactly like Appanna, but to distinguish between the two, let's call the snake in this human form as Naga. So Naga emerges from the bathroom into the kitchen and sits down beside the sleeping Rani and gently caresses her long hair. Soon Rani becomes aware and jumps up with a start. Surprised to see her husband, she naturally thinks that Naga is her husband. Here at home at night, "When did you come? I didn't hear you. Should I make you some dinner?" No, replies Naga. "Just sit by my side and talk to me. Tell me, do you miss your parents? What was life like at home before we were married?" Rani is very surprised, both by the sweet tone of his voice and the interest in talking to her. But she is happy to talk and narrates one story after another about her childhood. Soon she falls asleep with her head in Naga's lap. The next morning, before sunrise, Naga gently gets up, goes back to the bathroom, turns into a snake and slithers out of the drain. At noon, as always, Appanna came home. Rani ran to him excitedly, asking, "When did you leave in the morning? You should have woken me up." Appanna is annoyed with the chatter, holds up his hand, which says it all, and walks into the bathroom. Rani is left wondering, did I dream all that? But that night, Naga is back and is wooing her with attention and gentleness. While she enjoys his company, she is quite perplexed and she asks him, "Why do you torment me like this? Why are you so harsh and distant during the day and so sweet at night?" So Naga asks her, "If you don't want me to come, then I won't come." "But who am I to tell you whether to come or not to come? This is your house," asks Rani. To which Naga says, "Let's make an agreement. The day's visits are the husband's choice, but the night visits are the wife's choice. So if you don't want me to come here in the night, I won't." But Rani would have it no other way. She accepted the situation that her husband would be rough and cold in the day, but loving and caring in the night. She enjoyed all the attention, the conversation, and the tenderness, and the physical intimacy that a marriage should have offered her in the first place. With each passing day, Rani grew in confidence. She glowed with happiness. She was not a scared young girl now. She was a woman. She was a householder. She was a wife. After several months, one night during Naga's visit, Rani was particularly happy, and she sang and danced around. Very amused, Naga asked her what was with her today. And Rani said, "All these days and all these months, I wondered if I was dreaming about your visits in the night, your love and your caring. But now I know for sure that this is really happening. And the reason I know that is because I'm pregnant." Naga was shocked and dumbfounded. Seeing his reaction, Rani broke into tears. Naga rushed to console her. He assured her that he was very happy about the child, but he was very worried for her. He pleaded with her and asked to make 2 promises. One, that she would keep this a secret from everyone. "But a secret from whom?" she said. "I only meet you." "No, you keep it even a secret from me." And then he pleaded with her that at some stage she would be taken to the village panchayat to prove her innocence. "What innocence?" asked Rani. But Naga continued, "Please listen carefully, Rani. When the panchayat comes here, tell them you want to take the snake test." "Snake test? What is the snake test?" Naga explained, "You have to put your hand in an anthill and pull out a snake. But please remember, whatever you say after that, you have to tell the truth, or else the snake will have to bite you." "What?" "Trust me, Rani, this is the only way. But remember, you have to tell the truth." Before long, the pregnant belly eventually began to show. And very soon, Appanna was convinced that his wife, whom he had never slept with, was pregnant. And he was livid and enraged. He slapped her and threatened to call the village panchayat for justice. He walked off in a huff to call the panchayat. It didn't seem to bother him, or anyone for that matter, that he was openly in a relationship with a concubine, but yet accused his wife of infidelity. Soon the panchayat and a large group of villagers came to the house. When the panchayat asked Rani, "Beti, your husband says that he has never touched you. Then how can you be pregnant? Have you been unfaithful to your husband? If yes, you will have to be punished." Rani pleaded her innocence and finally told them that she was willing to take the snake test. News spread like wildfire. The entire village gathered in Appanna's house to see Rani take the snake test, because nobody ever volunteered for the snake test. Scared, very scared, with her hands and legs trembling, Rani walked towards the anthill. She closed her eyes and put her hand into the anthill. She could feel the slimy, slithering feel of a snake there. And with all the courage that she could muster, she grabbed hold of it and pulled it out, held it arm outstretched. It was a king cobra, and the snake wriggled and wriggled, and the crowd let out a large collective gasp. The Sarpanch shouted above the crowd and said, "Beti, tell us, have you been unfaithful to your husband?" With her eyes still closed and her voice trembling, Rani finally spoke and said, "Ever since I have been married, I have touched only 2 males." Before she could finish, Aparna started shouting, "2 males! She said 2 males! She is a harlot!" Rani started again. "Ever since I've been married, I've touched only 2 males. One is my husband, and the other is this king cobra." When she said that, the snake stopped wriggling and wrapped itself round Rani's neck. And when she left the neck of the snake, it rested its head on top of Rani's head like a crown. There was a stunned silence in the crowd. And then the crowd erupted. "She is a goddess! She is a goddess!" And they rushed to fall at Rani's feet. They brought a palanquin and paraded her around the village while the rest showered flowers on her. The Panchayat very knowledgeably explained to Aparna, "Aparna, it is not your fault. This is the way that goddesses reveal themselves. Now take good care of her and worship her." So thereafter, Aparna was a devoted husband, a reverential husband. He took care of Rani's every need. In due course, they had a baby boy. And every night, the snake would come into the room and hide himself in Rani's long, long tresses, caressing them and being with his beloved. And Rani, her son, Aparna and the snake lived happily ever after.
Wow, that's awesome, Chetan. I just want to ask you, what do you like most about this story?
Like any story, different people will have different takes on it. And many people think that Nagamandala is about Rani. But to me, the story is really about the 2 men. And they're not really 2 men. Both Aparna and Naga are really 2 sides of any man's personality. I believe that man is expected to be the breadwinner, the defender of the family, and therefore he has to project himself as the harsh brute to the outside world. And that is often in conflict with his role of being a householder and a loving husband and a loving parent. And these 2 personalities often clash with each other. And because of this, I feel very often men project themselves as brutes to the world, which includes treating your wife and all women as property and sex objects, while they're in public because they don't want to be seen as weak. But within the closed confines of the bedroom, they turn into romantic soft lovers. And at the end of the story, I like this particular ending because I feel both Naga and Aparna are reconciled. Both sides of that man's personality now peacefully coexist with each other. That's what I like about the story.
Okay. Have you had any personal experience that the story reminds you of that you could talk about?
Yeah, Peter. In my own life, I feel my father is a wonderful example of these personalities. My father was a terror to the outside world. His employees shivered in his presence. Even his clients and his friends were scared of his harsh tongue and temper. But at home, he was always the gentlest of fathers. Never a harsh word for his children. His children had him wrapped round their little fingers. His wife, my mother, might never accept this publicly, but he has been her best friend and strongest supporter for all her adult life.
That's a wonderful insight into the story, Chetan, and thank you for sharing it with us.
I must tell you that I've told the story several times, but this insight, as you refer to it, is only recent, and that's the beauty of storytelling. Layers unfold with each telling.
Okay, well, that's our story for today. Before I go, I want to thank you, Chetan, for this excellent telling of Nagamandala from Girish Karnad's play with the same title. And thanks to all of you out there, our listeners. I hope you enjoyed this storytelling and do join us for our next podcast.
This podcast is brought to you by Tathapi Trust Pune, a women and health organization. Be sure to give us your comments and suggestions for stories you want to hear on letstalksexuality.com. Stay healthy, stay safe, and have fun.